Hi everyone, welcome to Lays Real Talk. Good good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Okay, so we'll talk about the two sessions tonight. Let me see. All right, so yeah, it has been in session for a number of days now. The A lot of the personnel announcement will be made probably towards the end. There has been a lot of speculations about who is going to take what post. I would rather wait until the end when the final uh, uh, appointments are announced before I make any analysis. Because I think a lot of them are just speculations, and so up until today, I have not seen any formal policies being announced, other than there just has been a lot of reporting about what has been done previously. But today I saw some reorg being announced. So today is the first day that some of the changes or policy changes, organizational changes, have been announced. So I will be making more live streams to discuss that. So today's session, I'll primarily focus on the whole the format of the two sessions, and also I will talk about the Li Keqiang and Xi Jinping relationship because I think that's interesting, and also we'll talk about the myth behind why Hu Jintao was removed from the party congress last fall. I think uh, what the development at the two sessions might have just uncovered that. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so first we'll talk about this event. Yeah, this event is also the second coronation of Xi Jinping, because at the party congress he got the title of the party of the head of the party and then the head of the military, but the two sessions will actually officially give him the third term as the president of China. So this is like the second coronation for Xi Jinping, and that's why it's important. So the first thing I'll talk about is security. The security has been extremely high. Um, Public security and police are everywhere in Beijing, with police standing at every 200 meters. And in the heart of Beijing, a watchman post is placed, um, you know, every few, in some cases 100 meters, in some cases 200 meters. And also an army of elderly ladies wearing red jackets and red armbands are assigned to monitor pedestrians. So you have the deployment from the armed police, with guns, who actually are guarding at the intersection of major roads like the East Chang'an Street, which is the main road leading into the Tiananmen Square. And then down to the grassroots level, where you have retirees, elderly ladies, just watching, probably people from the neighborhood or anyone. Visitors who want to enter the Tiananmen Square must make a reservation a day before, and they have to undergo 3 security checks before being allowed to enter. And no books in people's luggages or bags are being searched. And what's written in the notebook is being reviewed, and questions are asked. So, people in Beijing, you should not bring any notebook with you, or even electronic devices. That things that you write on your electronic devices may be reviewed and asked. And the security check at downtown subway stations the same, is comparable to that of an airport, with every bag and every liquid being tested, and drinking water all needs to be scanned. So I do think I have some slides. Do I have some slides? I do. Oh, I forgot. Oh yeah. So here, this picture, this actually is taken from within the session. I was asking a friend, what do you think those guys are holding in their hands? They're wearing uniform. They're holding the same device in their hand. My friend said it's a knife. I said no. I don't think they're allowed to hold any knives inside the conference hall. I think it's the digital scanner that scan people, the body scanner. I think that's what they're holding. Yeah. So yeah, so these are the armed forces. These are the people actually with guns. Oh, and then the bridge watchers. Beijing authorities urgently hired um, a large number of what they call bridge watchers, and these people are well paid. They make a decent daily salary of 700 yuan a day. And then they are guarding all the flyovers in Beijing 24 hours a day. And in addition to these bridge watchers, they also have security officers patrol them with auxiliary police standing nearby with anti-riot batons, fire extinguishers, blast blankets, and anti-riot shields. So they are prepared. And then also from March 1st to the 14th, flying objects, including drones, paragliders, balloons, are all banned in Beijing. And Beijing's postmasters have announced that all mails and packages coming into Beijing are given a secondary security check. So all of these are done in place to welcome the 2,977 delegates for the National People's Congress, and then the 2,172 members attending the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. And the acronym is CPPCC, because it's a mouthful to say. Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC. The delegates that came from all over China are sequestered between their hotel and then the meeting halls. And they're not allowed to contact with the outside world or review any information. Their job at the conference is threefold. One, to applaud enthusiastically, and two, raise their hands to vote and vote yes. And three, do everything they can not to doze off during the long and tedious meetings, because it will be politically incorrect if the camera catches you or the cameras catch you sleeping, right? So that's their task for the day. Now, 81 of these 5,000 delegates are people with personal wealth of more than 1 billion US dollars. So according to Huron Research Institute, the organization that's devoted to tracking all the super wealthy people in China. So there are 81 of them. So gone are the Chinese big tech and real estate tycoons, such as Tencent's Ma Huateng, NetEase Ding Lei, Baidu's Li Yinghong, and JD or Jindu's Liu Qiangdong, and as well as the infamous property developer Evergrande's Xu Jiaying. Replacing them are 31 new billionaires or billionaire delegates who are the founders of some trendy industries. And they are the EV automakers, biomedical companies, and guess what? Artificial intelligence companies. Now, Li Keqiang, after being the premier for 10 years, gave his final government work report on March 5th. And he is trending, not because of his report, but because of something else, and I'll get to it. Li Keqiang was the first, let's talk about Li Keqiang first. He is the first, he belongs to the first post-Cultural Revolution class of students admitted to colleges after China resuscitated college entrance exams in the 1970s. He studied law at Peking University and holds a PhD in economics from the same school. And by the way, Beijing University is one of the top 2 schools in China, that and then Tsinghua University. By the way, both were established by Americans. I made a video about why the best Chinese higher education institutions are set up by Americans, I think last summer. You can check it out, or maybe I'll provide the link at the end of this. So Li Keqiang was chosen by Hu Jintao as his successor, but was opposed by the Jiang Zemin faction. Although Li Keqiang did not become the top CCP leader, he has been the second in command in China for the past 10 years. He's an advocate of reforms and belongs to the group of CCP leaders that have a pragmatic and pluralistic approach to politics. There was a time when the Chinese public putting high hopes in the Xi Jinping / Li Keqiang team or leadership team. They believe that Li and Xi, the two of them, could turn China around, but that proves to be wishful thinking. Despite his strong academic background and talent, Li Keqiang is called the weakest premier the CCP ever had, because Xi Jinping had severely limited his power as premier. So Li stayed in Xi's shadow for the past 10 years. The best example is the Sino-US trade war during the Trump administration. Li Keqiang, as the premier, should be the person responsible for such trade negotiation, right? Because it's his responsibility, being responsible for the economy. But Xi Jinping directly managed his vice premier Liu He, who is a Xi Jinping close ally, and who also acted as Xi Jinping's special envoy in the trade negotiation. So that entire trade negotiation, Li Keqiang was completely left out. But from time to time, Li Keqiang would utter the truth, which often embarrasses Xi Jinping, such as his comment about 600 million Chinese are living in poverty with monthly income of 1,000 yuan or less. Li's lack of confidence in China's economic outlook is most evident in his final speech given as the premier a couple of days ago. So comparing his report or his speech to the one he gave 5 years ago after the 19th Party Congress, Li omitted some important subjects in his final speech. He did not talk about China's contribution to the world economic growth. He did not talk about the rising consumer prices or the unemployment problem. I should say China's contribution to the world economic growth or the lack of. When talking about China's economic structure or infrastructure, he avoided talking about the weight of service sector in national economy. On reforms and opening up, he avoided mentioning market vitality and entrepreneurial creativity. While addressing poverty and people's living standards, he didn't mention the number of Chinese who have medical insurance, nor the number of overseas trips Chinese made in the past years. All of these that I mentioned that he omitted in his final speech were elaborated in detail 5 years ago when he made the same speech. So he talked for only 53 minutes, much shorter than his usual speeches. The delegates, however, gave him a long applauses that lasted 37 seconds. And it's the same in length as the first such report he gave as the premier in 2014. So 2014 was the first year that he gave that's after he has been in the role of a premier for 1 year, and so at the People's Congress session that year, he gave his first government report as the premier, and so people gave him a 30-second long applause, which broke the record. So his first one was 37 seconds long. His last speech was also 37 seconds long. I don't know if people time it well, but some people say that basically people applauded until he walked all the way back to his seat and sat down. So if he walked a little slower, the applause could be longer. It could be 40 seconds. So I think that's interesting. That speech wrapped up his political career, rumor says that he's going to teach at his alma mater, Beijing University. It's the last time Xi Jinping will ever. Oh, I do have some pictures. I forgot to show you pictures. Also, here's a picture of him giving the speech. And then as he walked, I'll talk about this guy later. As he walked by Xi Jinping, this is the moment he walked by Xi Jinping, and Mr. Xi does not look too happy, for a reason I'll describe later. And so, yeah, so this will be the last time Xi Jinping will ever listen to Li Keqiang give a report. Next time, it will be Xi Jinping's chosen premier, Li Qiang. See, Li Qiang and Li Keqiang, their name is almost the same. So this is Li Qiang. He will be the next premier. Many people say that the new premier looked rather depressed at the meeting, knowing full well about his challenges ahead. So, and people say Li Keqiang, while he gave speech, he looked rather, relaxed or okay. Even though he was sweating on his forehead, people noticed that he was sweating. But he was okay. But his successor looked a little nervous about what he's about to handle. So let me come back. We're going to see some fun video. Upon returning to his seat after his speech, and I think they pretty much wrapped up that session for that morning or afternoon, or for that segment of the meeting. And he turned to Xi Jinping. He buttoned his jacket. He turned to Xi Jinping. I think he was waiting for Xi Jinping. He was waiting to say something to Xi Jinping, because that would be the last time they would do this together. This ends his career completely, right? And Xi Jinping shook hands with him briefly without looking him in his eyes. So let me play that video. And Wang Yang, another CCP official who belonged to the reformist faction with Li Keqiang, who we know will also step down, right? But pretty much step down, like Li Keqiang, looked almost embarrassed when he realized that the two were about to shake hands. And so he looked away, or he looked away, or he would try to, like, distract himself. And I'm going to play you that video. And so here we go. Where's the video? Here's the video. Oh, let me start from the beginning. So this is, when they stood up. See how Xi Jinping did not, let me play that again. Xi Jinping did not even look at Li Keqiang in the eyes. Li Keqiang was waiting, but then he just walked away. But he really wasn't walking anywhere. He just turned, made a U-turn, a 90-degree turn, and then walking with a limp. And take a look at Wang Yang. I'm going to stop. Wang Yang is the guy who sat next to Li Keqiang on the far right. And and I think his reaction upon seeing the two of them was very interesting. Here we go. He kind of wanted to make himself, he was very uncomfortable, wanted to make himself disappear, and looked away. All right, so that's that. And let me, okay, so Xi Jinping, everybody noticed. Okay, let me come back. Here we go. Everybody noticed that Xi Jinping shook Li Keqiang's hand without looking at him. But this is still better than 9 years ago, after Li Keqiang's first government report as a premier. In 2014, Xi Jinping did not even shake his hand at all. So, but Xi Jinping obviously is not happy, because there was a video that went viral. And the video was a few days ago when Li Keqiang bid farewell to his staff at the office, the general office of the State Council. He gave an impromptu speech, and that speech, he kind of hinted his miserable relationship with Xi Jinping, or some people said that he obviously it's in reference to how he was treated. But the video got popular and prompted many discussions. And I think Xi Jinping felt the pressure. So here's the video, and I translated his speech in Chinese, into English for you. Here we go. Here we go. Let me just make myself disappear. Here we go. Okay, here we go.
现在在北方尚处冬季，但今天啊是阳光明媚，如沐春光。人们常说人在干，天在看，看来是苍天有眼啊，看着我们国办同志这些年来辛辛苦苦、扎扎实实做出的特殊的奉献，应该给你们奖赏。你看这个风已经呼风了。
I don't know if I should have muted my mic so that you don't hear any echo. So I hope it's okay for you audio-wise, but okay, here I am. Yeah, that video did not make Xi Jinping very happy. How do I know that? Because today, Xinhua reported a speech that Xi Jinping gave yesterday on March the 6th. And Xinhua published a quote from him criticizing Li Keqiang without mentioning his name. And this is very unusual. Because as much as they fight, the CCP leaders, they fight amongst themselves, they rarely gave any public statements, criticizing each other's work because they want to create that unity appearance. And so today, Xi Jinping said this. He said, some of our policies, when done well, are the success of the reforms. But when done poorly, they can be a sore point of corruption. And he gave the examples of CCP's management and service reform, which is an administrative reform that Li Keqiang pushed in 2015 that he always references. And Xi Jinping said, referring to that reform, after power is delegated, did the manager keep up? Was service in place? No. If you delegate without managing, things go terribly wrong. So obviously that's, everybody who's familiar with CCP politics know that he is he's criticizing Li Keqiang because that's Li Keqiang's policy and initiative. So that's that. So now let's talk about the CCP Congress and the American Congress. How I just want to compare them because I thought it's interesting. The comparison helps us better understand CCP politics. And so that with this understanding, how to deal with them, right? How to contain them. And I think this understanding could be missing, but I feel like we need that understanding. So let me quickly talk about the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or CPPCC. It's not a legislative body. It's not even a state institution. It's a united front organization for a multi-party coalition led by the CCP. In the words of the CCP itself, it's the main vehicle and practice form of Chinese democracy, whatever it means, if there's any Chinese democracy, in the sense of CCP democracy. But the CPPCC is mainly composed of members of this of the CCP, and then 8 democratic parties in China, as well as representatives of different ethnic minorities and also celebrities. So this organization invite all the famous Chinese scholars, celebrities. If you're someone important, if you're somebody plays an important role in society, they invite you to join this organization. So an important concept that needs to be clarified here is that China's 8 democratic parties are not opposition parties. They are all peripheral parties in existence to prove that there are more than one political party in China, just to show that the CCP is democratic in nature. But the 8 other parties are not involved in the executive branch of the government, nor in the legislative process. They have no direct political power. Their main job is being CCP's publicist or PR agents to persuade the outside world, as well as the Chinese people, to submit themselves to the CCP's leadership. Therefore, the CPPCC is often called a cosmetic organization for the party, because its goal is to make CCP look good. Now, compared to the CPPCC, the National People's Congress is considered a legislative body. But unlike Western legislators, they are amateurs, except for the chairman or the vice chairmen, and maybe the standing committee members. The CPC delegates have their day jobs. They serve a 5-year term, and there are currently 2,977 NPC delegates in China. These delegates treat the title as an honor, as opposed to their responsibility to serve the country. They gather once a year to raise their hands to vote on CCP-initiated policies. And so the NPC, or the National People's Congress, is called a rubber stamp organization. According to Chinese law, any Chinese citizen is eligible to run for the People's Congress, and they can do this by getting a recommendation letter from any one of the 8 political parties, or the CCP, the big party, or get a recommendation from more than 10 voters to become an independent candidate. So in October 2021, 14 Chinese here we go. So 14 Chinese, including family members of some of Beijing's human rights lawyers and rights activists, issued a declaration that they would run for NPC election, because, I mean, using, following the law, right? It's the right. These 14 people eventually stopped their election activities after they were talked to by the State Security Department, or forcibly sent away for tours. Some were threatened by their landlords to stop their leases. Some were even deprived of their personal freedom. So I just gave you a quick overview of the People's Congress. Now, how's that different from the American, the U.S. House of Representatives? And why does it matter here, right? And so now let me talk about the American Congress. So members of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 118th Congress were sworn in on January 7th, 2023. They had a difficulty in electing a speaker. During the process, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi could not take the podium to speak or do anything because she was the speaker of the previous Congress. So she's off duty. She's done. And before Kevin McCarthy got enough votes to be elected as the speaker, he couldn't take the gavel and preside over Congress. Now, the CCP's so-called democratic process is very confusing, because the purpose of this year's 2 sessions, right, the 2 sessions that are ongoing now, is to elect the leaders for the next People's Congress and the Political Consultative Conference. So technically, the previous Congress and CPPCC are history, and their leaders are off duty, and they're done with their job. like Nancy Pelosi, right, is a former speaker. And the members of the new People's Congress are selected by the people, and they're gathering to elect the new leaders. And that's why it's the same thing. It's just that in China, they have what, nearly 3,000 delegates. But in the U.S. Congress, we have 500, hundreds, right? But it's essentially the same function. They're gathering here. Of course, they're going to pass some motions, some laws, but they're also here to gather the next leader. But we know the leadership within the CCP are never elected. The leadership is internally decided based on power struggle. And the delegates are just here to give their stamp of approval after these decisions are made. So, and also because there's no opposition party, the leaders are the same group of people. Whether it's the past Congress or the current Congress, the leaders are the same group of CCP leaders, right? It's a small group of people. No matter how you elect them. So it's like a rotating musical chairs. So that creates a very odd and weird situation. And that is the leadership. Here I have a picture to show you. Yeah, here we go. So you have the leadership. So this is actually a picture taken at the session, at one of the two sessions. This is the CPPCC session, the political consultative session. They have 2 rows. Yeah, they have 2 rows of sorry. I'll show you the other picture later. So the leaders of the previous and the new Congress are sitting on the same podium. But it's unclear who's the real presiding leader. Because, okay, so this is a close-up. So you see how they sat in 2 rows? The rows in front are actually the leaders of the CPPCC. And then the rows in the back are the other leaders, the other CCP leaders. So you see the current, the guy sitting in the center is Wang Huning, right? He was in the Politburo, in the last Politburo, and is in the current Politburo. He has not been officially elected yet or announced yet, but he is presiding the meeting. And the previous CPPCC leader is Wang Yang, who is second on the right to Xi Jinping, or the man to Li Keqiang's left, to our right. Right. So what happened at these meetings, CCP meeting, is the previous CPPCC leader gave a report, and then while the new leader presides over the meeting without being elected, without him actually being officially elected. So, and some analogy of this would be Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy both sat at the podium at the 118th U.S. Congress, right? So Kevin McCarthy presides over the Congress before he was elected to be the House Speaker, while Nancy Pelosi gave a report on her great achievement to the new Congress. So that's essentially an accurate analogy, if I have to use American politicians and politics to describe what's going on in China. And the other odd thing is, if you look at this seating chart, right? People, the second person, the second most powerful person in China right now is not Li Keqiang, because he's no longer a central committee member. He's an ordinary CCP member. The second most powerful person in China is actually the man who is second on Xi Jinping's left, what I labeled new, right? New Politburo Standing Committee member. So people say, how could the second most powerful man who does not sit next to Xi Jinping, but who sat, so far away from him? So this has not happened before, because I think never in the history of CCP they have like such drastic changes among the Politburo Standing Committee members from one to another. So this really is a very odd situation. Yeah. So what I want to say is CCP tries to appear democratic, but because it doesn't have opposition party, and all decisions are centrally made, its so-called democratic process not only looks odd but confusing. Because people say, if you look at this picture, people say, well, who are really, who are really running the show? This is like in between two Congress, and the people who are not in charge anymore are giving reports, are giving important talks, and then the people who have not been elected are presiding over the meetings. But anyways, my point is, these so-called Chinese-style democracy is a complete waste of national resources and taxpayers' money, because they do not accomplish anything. It's just a show event to legitimize CCP's rule, but these meetings do not accomplish anything. The delegates do not work in the fashion that they're serving their country. They're just there to applaud, to raise their hand to vote, and then try not to fall asleep. But think about the amount of money they're spending on this conference. Think about the amount of money they could have spent on the schools, on helping the retirees. Think about all the public security, the money spent on hiring these bridge watchers, all for this nonsense show. I mean, it doesn't do anything, right? Because all the decisions are already made. So now let's talk about the Hu Jintao myth. If you look at this picture, the day before the opening of the CPPCC, Xinhua announced the conference chair, which is Wang Huning. He ranked first, and then he's the chairman of the meeting. Okay, I'm not saying that he's the chairman of the organization. They're just saying, well, he presides over the meeting. And sitting to his right is Shi Taifeng, the current minister of United Front Work. He ranked second in that announcement, and he will be the first vice chairman of CPPCC. And then Hu Chunhua, who is Hu Jintao's mentee, ranked third, who sat on the left. And remember when Hu Jintao was removed during that time, and there were a lot of discussions about that's linked to his mentee Hu Chunhua, because he was the only person, or he was the biggest surprise. He was the person who everybody expected that who will be in the Politburo, but he was not in the Politburo. So that was the one of the biggest news, right, coming out of that. But now everything is clear why that happened, because this seating plan, right? So Wang Huning in the center, and then the guy, what's his name, Shi Taifeng, who's the current minister of the United Front. By the way, this Shi Taifeng guy, the guy who's on the right, is again a Xi Jinping close ally. He is someone I think Xi Jinping wants to put in this organization. under Wang Huning. So he definitely wants to make him the second in command in the organization. Now, here's a problem. This guy was promoted to the Politburo at the 20th Party Congress, meaning this past October. And he was also promoted to be the Minister of United Front Work in October. Now, Hu Chunhua had been in the Politburo for 2 terms already. So, and then if Hu Zhenhua is in the Politburo, it would be his 3rd term, meaning starting his 11th year. So he would rank much higher than Shi Taifeng. So if Hu Zhenhua remained in the Politburo, he would be sitting in Shi Taifeng's position. He would be sitting on the right of Wang Huning, meaning he would be the second in command in CPPCC. And that would disrupt Xi Jinping's plan. And that's not something Xi Jinping would want. So the only thing they could do is kick him out of the Politburo. By removing him from the Politburo, then he does not have any political precedence over Shi Taifeng. And so he could rank after him. He could rank the 3rd and not the 2nd. So that unfolds. So what people say is, what happened at the Party Congress when they removed Hu Jintao, it has to do with Hu Chunhua being kicked out of the Politburo. But everyone in the Politburo, the old one and then the new one, knew that that was the plan, including Hu Chunhua himself. The only person who didn't know about it is Hu Jintao. So as he was sitting there looking at the name list, because the Politburo list is rather small, there are only 25 people, in this case 24 now, he could quickly see that his mentee is not on the list. So he started to ask a question, right? And that's why it's an issue. But everyone else looked away, like Wang Yang and everyone, all the other Politburo members knew what was it was all about. But people say that explains why Hu Chunhua, that's why the decision to remove Hu Jintao was not. That's why Hu Chunhua is removed from the Politburo is not a last minute decision, because there were people who were saying that Hu Chunhua was kicked out of the Politburo last minute, and then that upset Hu Jintao. But according to this, these personnel changes could not have been made last minute. So it was clearly planned. And but the only person who was left in the dark is Hu Jintao. So I just want to say that whether it's CPPCC or NPC, they do not have any real power. They cannot compare with American legislative body. These are just organizations that make CCP look good. And the only reason they're being held every year is so that they could show, the CCP can show the Chinese people that they have a democratic process. And actually, the spokesman for the MPC, the People's Congress, said that their Congress, their election process, this is his quote, said that it's the largest election in the world. It's the largest democratic election in the world, because they have to elect 3,000 delegates. But I think it's just such a joke. Hopefully this is helpful. I do not spend a lot of time talking about the policy changes, the personnel changes, because they are just coming out now. So I want to give you this kind of background introduction, so you know how these organizations work in the CCP apparatus. I hope it's helpful. All right, so that's all. It's a lot to say. All right. Okay, so let me see if people have any questions for me. Thank you, Sinan. Thank you for your contribution. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Boo Boo Bear. All right. Lei, why is she limping? That's a good question. Everybody noticed that. He has been walking like that for a number of years. When he visited France in 2019, before the pandemic, people were making videos to say that he has some serious problem. There were also rumors that he had like a brain aneurysm because of his walk, his slow gait. I don't know. Maybe he's trained to walk slowly in that kind of a environment to show his power, to show his authority. But yeah, everybody noticed he walks. It looks like he walks with a limp. I don't know. From Casey Langerberger, I love your videos and thank you for tonight's coverage. Could you tell us your main purpose for exposing the corruption of the CCP? And thank you for your voice. My purpose, because I was born and raised in mainland China. I saw my family. My parents were very adamant about leaving. Sending me and my sister, to leave China. And then because of what happened during the Cultural Revolution, what happened during the Cultural Revolution to my family and also many other families. And but after coming to after having lived here long enough, I rediscovered my own culture, and I realized a lot of the things that I knew about China was wrong. And also, I have to learn how to be a human being again, because we were not taught about normal social relations, about social interactions, about normal communications. I mean, everything we learned it's just not very healthy. I mean, when you're not allowed to speak your mind, when you're not allowed to tell the truth, when little kids growing up are being trained to say certain things to make adults happy, that's not a healthy environment. That's not a healthy society. So this is one of the things that I went through, and a lot of my friends, Chinese American friends, also went through that. The ones from mainland China, and my family went through that too. So, and then now when we look back at some of the things that are happening in China, and also talk to some of the people from mainland China, we recognize they have the same problem that we used to have. So it's important to help them. And also the pandemic really, and before that, we were all very busy, right? And then the pandemic really made all of us rethink the harm the CCP can cause to all of us. So you ask me, why do I want to do this? This is not an easy job, to be honest with you. To find a full-time job and to make a steady salary, have a 40-hour job is much easier than this. But this is much more rewarding, because I feel like I can directly make an impact. I could directly make a difference. And not a lot of people are doing that. So that's what I'm doing this. And I'm very determined to grow this channel, because I think it's helpful. I'm not really doing this for my own fame. I'd rather be a woman that nobody recognizes. But I think it's important. And not a lot of Chinese Americans are doing this. But if everyone is doing this, maybe I will retire. I'll go find a full-time job. So that's why. Thank you, Casey. All right, let me see. Any other questions? From Sinan, you tell us insider stuff, and yes, very few do that. Thank you. From Matthew Morgan, thank you. From Xi Shanshuang, I think this is a thank you for all your hard work, and your time and honest effort. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Can you delve into Wang Huning and his philosophy sometime, please? We know and can. I want to do that. Yeah. I actually plan on to do another session this week on this because he is now putting charge of CPPCC, which will play a very important role in Xi Jinping's strategy against Taiwan. And so I think it's very important that we understand his philosophy and where he's coming from and his possible strategy or method in the coming months or even years, because it's important. It's related to Taiwan. So yes, that's a very good question. I'm glad you brought it up. I will talk about that probably Thursday. For last week, for a while I had no topics. I wasn't sure what topics to talk about, and all of a sudden there's just so many things I want to talk about, and it's hard for me to choose. But I'll definitely cover that because it's important. From Jeffrey Hampton, question: Congress has been really talking tough on China. I fear the Chinese people, as opposed to the CCP, might get angry with the US. I think my advice to them is separate Chinese people from the CCP. I think they're talking tough on the CCP, on the Chinese Communist Party, and they distinguish the party from the Chinese people and China. So I think if you're talking tough on the CCP, you're actually on the side of the Chinese people, because CCP does not represent the interest of its people. I mean, you could tell from zero COVID, from the white paper movement, from everything that we've seen, when you talk tough on the CCP, you are on the side of the Chinese people. So it's okay. But if you sort of, combine them like CCP, because this is the trick CCP plays. It wants to represent all of Chinese people. It wants to represent China. Come on, China has 5,000 years of history. You've only been around for 100 years. You cannot represent 5,000 years of history, right? So it's like the Republicans or the Democrats, each party is just a party, but the party cannot represent the United States. The party cannot represent all of America or all of the United States. It's just a political party. So same with the CCP. So I think they need to be clear on that, and then that should be okay. Let me see. Are you going to talk about China's collapsed economy? Yes, I want to talk about that because there's some very interesting analysis coming out of China. I do want to talk about that. I'll have a script half written. I'm just trying to, catch up with myself. I have so many things I want to talk about, but I only have one head, two hands. So yes, it's on my list of things to do. Thank you. All right, from Sila Larson. Have you spent time in Taiwan? If so, did it evoke a sense of what China might have looked like before the CCP takeover? Does the CCP feel embarrassed and avoid talking about Cultural Revolution now? Yes, I've been to Taiwan many times. I really love the place. I think I met some of the nicest Chinese people there. Yeah. Does the CCP feel embarrassed and avoid talking about? I don't think CCP has any sense of shame. Do they ever feel embarrassed about anything? I don't think so. I think it's true that they do not want to talk about Cultural Revolution, but I don't think they're embarrassed about anything. All right. But thank you for the great question and donation. From Keith Tusky, do you feel like the CCP needs to create war in order to distract the Chinese population away from the domestic situation? It's likely. Um, reason for war is always to gain political power, whether it's domestic or internationally. And CCP's crisis is always bigger internally. Its internal crisis is always bigger than external. So it's likely. From Cowboyman, did you notice that the official Lunar New Year travel figures suggested that close to 400 million less people traveled within China compared to 2019? Yeah, that's a very good point. They're just when it that's a very good point. Li Keqiang also did not mention any travel numbers in his speech, whereas previously he likes to mention that as kind of an indication of a thriving economy, domestic consumption. That's a very interesting number. Yeah, the pandemic did kill a lot of people, and then the second wave may be starting. There's so many reports about people having this flu. And now they're just not telling people. And this flu has all the same symptoms as COVID, but they're not diagnosing people COVID. They're not. They went from another extreme, from testing everyone like 5 times every day for COVID to not testing people for COVID, even though that patient exhibits all the symptoms of COVID. So now they want COVID to go away. So now they call this flu, 甲流, or type A flu. A lot of kids are suffering from that, and it seems that the younger people are hard hit. So it went from the older people to younger people now. So people are now nervous. They wonder if it's the second wave. That's why I say, this government is against its people. I mean, it just has no respect for human life, and now it's causing panic because parents want to know, well, what is it that my kid is having? Is it COVID or is it really just a flu? And you don't know, and that's only causing more panic. And when people are panicking, it's not good for social stability. So I don't know. Yeah, it just defies logic. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph Wan. Your videos analysis are very insightful. Thank you, Joseph, for your donation. And Domingo, a bug. Thanks, Lei, for your great analytical examination of this topic. Can you please tell us how you get this insight from inside China while you are really living outside China? It's everywhere outside China. And it's also a lot of this are inside China too. As much CCP censors information, they cannot censor everything. Like the video I show you, where Li Keqiang gave a speech, it's on Twitter. It's posted in China. There are people who post viral videos in China and then post them outside China on social media platforms like YouTube and Twitter. It's probably banned now in China, but yeah, there are people dedicated to posting information that the world should know that came from China. Didn't CCP make the claim that they eradicated COVID? I think, yeah, they celebrate the success, the great success in fighting COVID or something like that, which is pathetic, at the cost of so many human lives. How could they celebrate it? All right. Lei, you're one of the top places for info. Please keep up the good work and maybe do a video on CCP infiltration of the Canadian elections. I'm making a video on CCP infiltration all over the world. I'm telling you all my plans, but It's like you have a, yeah, it's like there are a lot of things I want to make, but I just have to have a plan and do one at a time, but keep at it. Yeah. Well, thank you, Morgan. Wang Yi strikes me as a overly ambitious. Is he a communist like Xi Jinping? Do you think he believes all the American rhetoric, or is he just reciting the party line? Um, Wang Yi, many people say by nature he was not. Wang Yi speaks Japanese. He was the former ambassador to Japan. He is by training a Japanese expert. Um, you know, China's diplomats, there's an interesting combination. It's always a combination of a US expert and then a Japanese expert, because Japan and the United States are like the two most important countries for China in terms of diplomatic relations. So, yeah, so now Wang Yi, who is a Japan expert, is now the highest ranking CCP diplomatic office officials, and then Qin Gang, who's the not prime minister, foreign minister, is a U.S. expert. Wang Yi, many people say, are not a wolf warrior by nature, but he followed Xi Jinping's directive by talking tough and playing tough. So how much of that is his real thinking, his real belief, or how much of that is his good acting by delivering what his boss wants him to deliver? I think it's more acting. I think there are more acting um, than his own nature coming out. I think I think that assessment is right. By nature, he's not a wolf warrior. Yeah, I think he's reciting party line. Okay. All right. So, wow, it's 1 hour and 5 minutes. We had a great discussion. Any other questions for me? Sumilan said, in the US, there's flu, COVID, and strep, which is epidemic in schools. Hospitals say some patients have all three. Well, at least, we know that they're all three going on, but in China, they're telling you there's no COVID. It's just flu, which is scary because, if you have COVID and you don't know you have it, I don't think people welcome that idea, right? Okay, so from J1111, hi Lei, have you read Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism by Robert Lifton? Is brainwashing in China worse now or when you were a child? I have not read the book. I have not heard about the book, but thank you for bringing it up. Is brainwashing in China worse now or when you were a child? I think it's worse now. And the reason why I say that is it's worse because you don't know you're being brainwashed. The approach, the method they use are so sophisticated, and you're even being addicted to being brainwashed without knowing. And back then, when we were little, although as a kid, I don't know, but at least my parents know it's brainwashing because they um, they had some schooling before the communists came over, or at least in the early years of Mao's regime, things weren't as bad. It was pretty bad, but it weren't as bad as until about 10 years after the CCP took power. So I think the brainwashing now is worse. It's I think it's 10 times worse because back then, I think the propaganda just want you to believe in communism, but it does not aim to destroy like the it does not aim to destroy the basic human goodness. Like, it does not try to destroy morality. I mean, there's still, I'm not saying it has that, but still, people now, it's like completely upside down. And then you don't even know. So I think it's a lot worse. I think it's a lot worse now. The worst is we are being brainwashed and we don't know. Yeah. All right. Okay. So if there are no more questions, I will end it here. I really enjoyed this dialogue. I hope we could go on, but it seems that there are no questions. Oh, here. How will CCP use TikTok as a cognitive warfare against Taiwan? TikTok is the algorithm of TikTok. It's just so. I made 2 videos talking about TikTok. You should take a look at it. First of all, it's popular in Taiwan among the young people, and it feeds you content that's definitely pro CCP without you knowing. And it's a big question that you're raising. I can only talk generally. It's such a nice tool for CCP because everybody is on social media platform, right? Everyone is on some type of social media platform, and once social media know who you are, what you like, they analyze you more than they know you more than you know yourself. They can even predict using AI. They can even predict your behavior and feed you the information that you want to see that make you happy, in a pattern that you cannot let go. And then when you cannot live without TikTok, and then they got you. I mean, you're going to believe whatever they tell you. So that's why it's dangerous, and it's popular among Taiwanese young people. Yeah, and that's why it's dangerous. Xi Jinping is using US-led threat to divert people's attention from other domestic issues, instead using to instigate nationalism among Chinese. Yes, that's a very good observation. It is right. Because today, guess what? Today, Xi Jinping made a comment criticizing the United States, and this is very rare. I just read that this afternoon. At one of the breakout sessions at the People's Congress, he said, this I actually have the quote here. He said, US-led Western countries have implemented an all-around containment, siege, and suppression against us, bringing unprecedented and severe challenges to our development. So that's what the Chinese Xinhua report said. But in the English language report of Xinhua, the report did not mention the word containment, and nor did it mention the United States in the English report. You see? So that tells me it's targeted for the domestic audience, right? Why would you say that in Chinese only? It's obviously for the domestic audience. So yeah, so your observation is right. Thank you for bringing that up. All right. From Stephen, Pugsley, thank you, Lei, for being candid about your upbringing and how you've grown and how you can help others. Well, thank you. It's honestly how I feel. I heard Tianmu is American company, shell company. Well, almost all these Chinese companies, they have a shell company, right? Registered somewhere in the Bahamas or the Virgin Islands, or a American company, but they're essentially, and this is one of the strategies the Chinese do. I mean, they set up foreign companies with foreign names, and then they hire foreign executives, but they're essentially Chinese company controlled by the Chinese. Be aware of that. There'll be more of that coming. Okay, but it is essentially Tianmu. Right, is a Chinese company. All right. All right, so that's all. I've talked for an hour and 15 minutes, but I really enjoyed this dialogue. Thank you so much for asking me these great questions, and I thank everyone for your great contribution. I appreciate that. YouTube's algorithm isn't always on my side, so my ad income is still limited, but I really appreciate your donation. That does help me pay bills. So thank you very much. I'll see you. If I have time, I'll do one tomorrow because there's so much going on now. If not, definitely Thursday. Okay, I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye bye.